Java includes some special reference variables that are important for us to understand. Now, one of these is the this reference, and the this reference allows you to refer to the current object. So it's useful for any time you want to be very explicit and indicate that you're referring to the current object. And it's also useful for cases where an object may need to pass references to itself to other methods. We'll see this used a lot throughout the course, but let's look at a simple example. Remember that we have our flight class, and we had that method we just wrote called hasRoom. Now, the hasRoom method uses data from the current instance, and it also uses data from an instance passed in, F2. Right? So we have our F2.passengers, which refers to the passengers of the instance passed in, and then our other passengers refers to the current instance's passengers. And this is completely valid the way we have this written. But if we wanted to make it more explicit that we were referring to the current instance passengers, what we could do is we could actually put this in front of the passengers on the left, saying that we're referring to this one inside of the current instance, right? So it allows us to get rid of that ambiguity and make our code more clear. There are other cases that maybe we had a local variable or something that maybe had a name collision with a member field. We could also use this to disambiguate that. We'll see an example of that shortly later in this module. Another special reference is the null reference, and this is a literal. And null refers to an uncreated object, and you can assign it to any reference variable. And you want to really just use it to say that, hey, this reference variable isn't pointing to anything yet. So we take a look at some code here. Remember that we wrote that code earlier where we declared our two flights, LAX1, LAX2, and then we're going to have our other flight, LAX3, that if there was room, we would assign a new flight instance to with the combined passengers of LAX1 and LAX2. Well, this code as it's written kind of creates a problem, right? Notice that our flight LAX3, well, if there wasn't room to combine them, LAX3 could end up potentially set to nothing, right? We learned earlier that local variables cannot be uninitialized, so we need to initialize LAX3 to something, and we want to initialize it to no object. So that's where null comes in. So what we can do here is that simply say flight LAX3 equals null. So now it's initialized to point to no object at all. So let's say that later in our program we do some work and we want to know if LAX3 was actually assigned a flight or not. Well, we can actually compare LAX3 to null. So we're saying, well, if LAX3 is not equal to null, in other words, is LAX3 no longer pointing to nothing? Does it point to something? Well, and if it does, we know the flights were combined, so we could print that value out.